It's the BSDFS Fantasy Football Podcast. If you don't know, now you know. If you ain't listening, why not? Boom.
This is the BSDFS Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by Scotty, Brian, and Mike. With the quick picks, it'll make you the quick bucks. We're going to succinctly cover the quick picks that will make you money. All right, now let's go ahead and start off with some weather with Mike. Take it away.
All right. Well, there's not too much to be worried about. There's just one situation to really keep an eye on. In Chicago, right now, winds are sitting around 10 to 13 miles per hour in that game, and it's supposed to be 32 degrees. So keep an eye out on that as the week moves on. If that wind picks up, that could start to affect that game a little bit.
Gotcha, and that's like the only game that you really spotted on there?
Yeah, that's the only thing I saw to really cause concern. There's some rain here and there in different games, but rain without the wind is nothing really to worry about.
Got it. All right. And Mike, you're also going to start us off with some quarterback this week.
Okay, well, it kind of feels a little silly saying this, but I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes at 8,100. The reason I'm saying this is he's priced up in a perceived tough matchup on a slate that has a plethora of 50-plus point total matchups. So that it's not going to put him in the sneaky area, but he will probably be less owned than usual. So you get a little bit of leverage with him, and playing not low owned but lower owned Mahomes is very attractive in tournaments to me.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, Mahomes can always go off, and especially if you've got a lot of people kind of off of him, he could always be worth it. You just never know. I mean, the only thing is he's got to definitely produce value to be able to be worth that price point.
Yeah, but he's certainly capable.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he always is. So, Scotty, how about your pick?
All right. I'm going to be a little bit weird this week. I'm going to save some money with some Mike Glennon. He's going against Tennessee at 5,100. We got a 53-point total. Tennessee favored by 7.5. But we also have a Tennessee team that is 30th against the pass in the DVOA rankings. They're allowing 274 passing yards per game. And if you look back at their Week 2 game, Minshew was able to get 28.46 DraftKings points against them. So the matchup's definitely there, and the volume's definitely there as well, averaging 38 attempts over his first 2 starts, and he'll still be starting over Minshew. So he's in a good matchup to save some money this week.
I heard that Minshew begged to start because I guess he's healthy now, and they're like, no, Glennon's going to start.
Right, yeah.
Which I feel like is just them being like, we're still going to tank.
Yeah, and Tennessee runs at a really fast pace, too, so if they get up and Jacksonville's playing from behind, then that sets up definitely a lot of attempts.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Well, one that I want to go on, which I've brought up a few times this season, is some Justin Herbert sitting at 6,800 after he got just absolutely annihilated last week against the Patriots. I'm very happy I stayed away from him last week, but technically they're playing at home, quote unquote, this week, which just means they go to Arizona, right? Isn't that correct? Or I thought both LA teams play in Arizona now because they can't play pro sports in California. So it's technically home, but not really home. You guys not familiar with it?
I don't know how they're handling that. I didn't check because usually that's a closed game or closed doors. I know San Francisco has a home game, and I thought they were going to Arizona
I could be wrong. Maybe they got rid of that, but I thought that they were doing that for like a month, that they weren't allowed to play sports. But it's still technically they don't have to travel across the country. It's a reasonable price point total, point total of 489.5. He's only 6,800, which for what he's done so far this season, as far as DraftKings goes, he definitely puts up pretty much a floor of 20 points with some really good upside. And as we've seen, Atlanta loves to let quarterbacks flourish. So he can definitely get up some points in there. And I think it'll be a good bounce back week for him, even though the game kind of doesn't matter because they're not going to be able to make a run at anything.
Yeah, no, I like Herbert in a bounce back spot.
Yeah. All right. Anybody got another one?
I'll go a little crazy here with some Jalen Hurts at 5,100. The idea of starting an Eagles QB might seem a bit appalling to a lot of people, but Hurts' mobility can make up for a bad offensive line. And while the Saints defense has been really good against quarterbacks this season, they haven't played any quarterbacks that have that skill set. They've pretty much played all the statue quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So,
also, on top of it, they don't really have much tape on Hurts.
Yeah, there's nothing for them to really study except his senior year. So,
yeah. I always feel like if you can get on a quarterback right in the first 2 or 3 weeks that they're starting, it's always worth a shot because nobody really has anything on him. After that is the real test. I mean, look at how Minshew crushed it when he came in and just fell apart because everybody figured out what he did.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to the running back, and Scotty's going to go ahead and start us off with that this week.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and pick on Houston again, and I'm going to pick up some David Montgomery sitting at 6,500. He's finally starting to get some momentum going. He's had over 27 points in the last 2 games, and he's still at a pretty good price. As we know, Houston's not good against the run. They're 26th in the DVOA rankings, and they are still the second worst in rush yards allowed per game. So it's a pretty good price and a great matchup for a player that's been trending up.
Yep. Yeah, I was definitely on him as well. And I was going to mention how he finally broke 100 yards 2 weeks ago against Green Bay, who's also really weak against the run. So, and he has pretty good hands the past 2 weeks. He's had 10 targets and he's dropped, I think, 1 the whole time. So that's another good point for him, especially getting those extra points for the catches.
Yeah, he's going to get all the opportunity. I don't like him individually as a player, but he's in a good spot. There's definitely bust potential with him, especially if that game gets slowed down and he can't get as many plays as they're used to getting.
Yeah. Well, one of my picks, which I feel like will be a little bit controversial, is some James Robinson. He's sitting at 7,500, which is kind of pricey, especially for that game, and being that they've got Mike Glennon there. But it's the highest game point total at 53.5. He's been trending upwards the past few weeks, and Tennessee has been real weak against the run. They're sitting at the 26th against the run currently. I think a lot of people will be probably kind of stay away from him because they expect Tennessee to kind of just crush him and them to have to throw the whole time. So, but the past 2 weeks, they've actually surprisingly stayed pretty close in games against Cleveland and Minnesota. So I do think that he's still playable in this situation.
Yeah, he's definitely still playable. He got 100% of the workload. I believe it was last week or the week before, and he's been sitting around in the 90% each week. For a rookie running back, that's unheard of, and for an undrafted rookie running back, that's ridiculous. But I mean, nothing's going to change. So,
Mike?
I guess one I'm going to go with is if DeAndre Swift doesn't play, then Adrian Peterson down at 5,000. The new coaching staff favors Peterson, and the Packers can definitely be had on the ground. At 5,000 with that workload, he can definitely produce. You only need 15 points for him to really hit value. And if Swift plays, I like Swift as well.
But what if, by what I was reading, was that even if Swift does play, he's not going to be playing as many snaps. Would you be completely off of Peterson if Swift's in there, even just at a small role?
If they're splitting work, I think there's probably better plays around that price range. I really like Peterson if he's getting the full workload or close to it.
Gotcha. All right. Do either one of you guys want to cover anybody else? Scotty had my other one with Montgomery.
I'll go with a little. We can go back to Jonathan Taylor from last week. I mean, it's nothing crazy sneaky or anything, but he got 22.5 fantasy points on 13 carries and 3 targets last week, and the coaching staff would have to be crazy not to feed him more at this point. So he's got Las Vegas, which is a good matchup, and if he gets closer to the 22 carry workload like he did
Earlier.
2 weeks prior to last
how
week.
Well he produced last week, yeah.
Yeah,
that was my sneaky pick last week, so
yeah, he was 9% owned, but
I mean, that's still sneaky for the most part.
It's under 10. I don't know. For me, sneaky's under 5. But
okay. You just can't give me credit, Mike. I get it. All right. Well, let's move on to wide receiver, and Mike's gonna go ahead and start us off with that as well.
All right. I like some Robbie Anderson at 6,200 with Moore and Samuel most likely out. Moore is definitely out. Samuel still has some chance to be cleared before Sunday, but Denver is missing their top corner, and that would pretty much.
I just read that he's out for 6 games.
Yeah, or something close to that, but I mean. That would be funneling a lot of targets to Anderson, and especially like McCaffrey got injured in practice again, supposedly. So there's really not too many options to really take targets away from Anderson.
Well, yeah, and Davis isn't much of a receiving running back.
He can still do it, but Teddy and Anderson have had the best connection so far this season.
Yeah, and Anderson's got a lot of speed. He showed that over on the Jets, which is pretty impressive if you can do well on the Jets. But yeah, I don't hate it. I mean, like, they've been pretty decent, even though, like, I mean, I don't think anybody expected them to be good, but I like it. Yeah. So I will go ahead and tell you my pick, and the first one I'm going to go with is Corey Davis. He had a blow-up game the other week against Cleveland with 38 points. He almost hit 200 yards. He's still somehow sitting only at 5,700, and he's going up against a super weak defense against Jacksonville. The game point total is 53.5, and surprisingly, the last time that those teams played each other, in week 2, Henry only put up 8 fantasy points. So that would be like my biggest caveat, is worrying that Derrick Henry would, control all of the, momentum and just get the ball nonstop. But the previous time that they played this year, it was actually more of a passing game. So I feel pretty good about that, especially after coming off of almost a 200-yard game.
Yeah. I don't mind some Corey Davis or some A.J. Brown. I know Jacksonville has been pretty generous towards the wide receiver ones specifically, but either one can act as that any given week.
Yep. All right, Scotty.
All right. So again, I'm going to go kind of risky, kind of cheap. Going to do some Brashad Perryman going against Seattle. He's sitting at 3,900. I think more people are going to be higher on Crowder just because he is coming off of his, Darnold and Crowder's first multi-touchdown game of the year. So I think people are going to be a little higher on him. So it'd be a good chance to go with Perryman, who is pretty clearly the number 2 receiver on the team. I know that's not saying too much. He does have a super low floor, but he does have a 30-point game under his belt, so the ceiling is definitely there.
Didn't somebody have him last week?
Yeah, it was me.
Gotcha. Hey, I got to dish it out every now and then if I can.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a boomer bust play, but Seattle is a bottom 5 passing defense, and they are allowing the most passing yards per game, so hopefully the Jets can do something.
Yeah, they'll probably have to do a lot to try to even get remotely keeping up with the game.
Yeah, 13.5 point underdogs, so.
Yeah. I will do another one that I want to bring up, which is not, it's not overtly obvious, but I do think that he will be pretty high owned, is some Adam Thielen. The game is sitting at 52.5. He is more of one of the, more expensive picks typically from what we go for. But Tampa is second against the run, which means they may not be able to lean on Cook. Cook is still priced at I think 9,400. Yep, 9,400. And so I think that they're going to have to win. If they want to win against Tampa Bay, they're going to have to win by throwing it. Kirk has actually been throwing it lately. So I think that storyline actually matches up a little bit better. And, I just think it's a good storyline for him to be able to do well in.
Yeah, he's finally not crazy expensive.
Yeah.
So I do like him as well.
And the Rams game, that was one of I think it was the Monday night game, right? Where the Rams beat Tampa Bay. They showed it was just throw to be able to win. And it was still close, but they kept in there by doing that. So I expect most teams to kind of replicate that.
Yeah, they're going to have to pass to win.
Yeah.
So he should get the opportunity.
Yeah. Anybody want to go over one last one?
I'll touch on some Michael Gallup sitting down at 3,800. Tuesday night, he saw 11 targets. And since Dalton has taken over, it seemed like Gallup has gotten sort of an uptick in targets, and if that connection's growing stronger, he did, I think it was about 85 yards and a touchdown Tuesday night that he got. Down at 3,800 for that talented a receiver.
Yeah.
That's incredible value.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely agree with that one. And especially Cincinnati not being that good on defense.
Yeah.
All right, and we're going to move on to some tight end, and I am going to go ahead and start us off with that. And I'm going to keep on going with that hot hand of Mike Gesicki. And he hasn't gone much up in pricing. I think he went up maybe $200 or $300, so he's sitting at 4,500. Game point total is not determined yet. Kansas City is 25th against the tight end, and he had double-digit targets last week and almost broke 100 yards. So I think he's kind of proven that they need to use him more, and this is definitely going to be one of their toughest challenges going up against Kansas City.
Yeah, I definitely like going back to him this week because for some reason Tua isn't connecting with Parker that well, and Jakeem Grant got a little banged up during the game, so I think Gesicki's going to be the best passing option on that team.
Yeah. Mike?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go with some Logan Thomas, or who the Steelers defense know as Daddy, sitting at 3,300. Thomas, he's a matchup nightmare, and he doesn't have a lot of competition for targets. So even in tough matchups, he can produce, as shown, Monday night against the number one team against tight ends. So he put up 24 fantasy points, with a little bit extra there in the decimal. So
I like the one with the
one-handed
catch, right?
No, Cam Sims had the one-handed catch.
Okay. Yep. Don't have much to say there. All right. Well, Scotty, your pick.
All right. So I'm going to go with some Hunter Henry this week going against Atlanta. He's sitting at a pretty reasonable price of 4,400. We got a 49 point total. I can't really do much worse than a goose egg. Atlanta is one of the weaker defenses against tight ends. They are allowing quite a few fantasy points, and Henry did have a pretty good streak coming into that last week.
He didn't have a goose egg last week. He got one catch. He had 1.5.
Well, I'm saying the whole Chargers offense. Yeah. But yeah, he was averaging 13 points a game in the 3 games leading up to the New England game. So, the Chargers are in a position to kind of bounce back against Atlanta, and Herbert's throwing the ball quite a lot. I think he's actually averaging the most pass attempts per game over the last 3. So the volume's definitely there as well.
Does he have any competition at tight end?
No.
Okay.
The occasional red zone stealing from like Donald Parham, but that they've seemed to have gotten off that, but teams can always try and throw that back in at any moment. But I wouldn't be off of Henry because of that.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to check. I was curious. So, all right, and let's move on to defense. And to start us off with that is going to be Scotty.
All right, so I'm going to save some money this week. I'm going to go with the Giants against Arizona. It's definitely some recency bias here, but the Giants did just hold Seattle to 19 points. So at 2,600, it's a good way to save money this week going against Arizona. The Giants have been on fire recently. I think they're on a 4 or 5 game win streak all of a sudden. So they've been trending up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I had some notes on them as well. I definitely like going back to them because they're not priced up crazy, and something's wrong with Kyler Murray right now ever since he got his shoulder banged up in that game. When rushing QBs get a shoulder injury, they tend not to run as much, and it also of course affects the passing. So, and the Giants have a good defense, and Hopkins hasn't been doing that well against top corners lately.
Gotcha.
So, well, I guess the other defense I had would be Washington D, or Roethlisberger's daddy. Only 300 more than last week, and they're going up against San Francisco, who of course
their defense did not do well against the Steelers. Just enough to win.
Oh my God, give it a break. Steelers fans are so friggin' spoiled. You really thought they were going to go 16-0.
No. I was expecting a loss, just not against Washington.
They did enough.
They did.
I mean, they sealed the game at the end. You know, with that tipped ball to interception, that pass rush is mean. And but I mean, San Francisco, they are starting Nick Mullins, who isn't the worst backup in the league, but he's not the best, and they're not going to have too much success running the ball, and they're going to put pressure on Mullins, and I can see a lot of bad decisions being made there.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be a little bit bitter, but I am. But yeah, so my defense, I was looking at some Carolina. They were at 2,900 on their current price. Past two games, they've definitely been heating up. They got 17 and 19 points in the past 2 weeks. They're going up against Drew Lock, who is definitely known for throwing interceptions, and they're playing at Carolina, so they don't have to deal with that tough environment of the Denver home games. So I think at 2,900, they're not looking too bad.
No, I don't mind that at all. They do have good passing options, but Drew Lock has just played horribly. I'll be surprised if he's starting next season.
Agreed with that. All right. Well, we're on to the sneaky pick of the week. And I believe Mike is the one starting us off with that.
All right. I'm going to go staying with that Carolina-Denver game. I'm going to go with some Ian Thomas at 2,500. Without Moore and Samuel, Thomas becomes one of the better receiving options on that team. Sort of behind Anderson and McCaffrey. And he is a talented tight end, especially on the receiving side of the ball. He's best comparable to, Austin Hooper. So he was playing on a team that's got one of the best wide receiver cores in the league and has Christian McCaffrey on it. So there hasn't been much need to really try and use him.
Yeah.
And I think that can go overlooked by the field, and he's priced down at the, stone minimum for 2,500. So it doesn't take much if he just gets a few more targets.
Yeah, I could see that. All right, Scotty.
All right. So I kind of hinted at this earlier, but I am kind of liking some Sam Darnold. I know we should have learned our lesson by now, but he's sitting at 5,100 going against the team that's allowing the most pass yards per game. So, he's finally getting a matchup where he should be able to throw a little bit more. And he is also coming off of his first multi-touchdown game, so he is heating up by his standards.
He's seeing ghosts.
I love it.
That would definitely be like a cheap pairing in there to be able to stack up on some other positions. So.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Well, but he's got great receivers. All three passing options in Seattle just as blood points to opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah.
This season, so he's in a great spot.
Yeah. Well, mine that I was looking at is some Tyler Boyd. He's still wide receiver one, sitting super cheap at 4,900, going up against a super weak defense against the Cowboys. Most people will be off of him because they have the backup quarterback and no offensive line, but he's still wide receiver one against a weak defense, and I still think he could have a solid game. Last week, he showed that he can still get some of those deep balls. Well, one deep ball. He went 72 yards for a touchdown. So I believe against a weaker defense, he might be able to get more targets and a little bit more action in there, especially since he was the only bright side of that game. Yeah,
it's not always fun to talk about what we got wrong, but it is fun to talk about what we got right. I'll just start off here. For my picks, Giants did great. On that one, they got 13 points. Unfortunately, the Patriots just put up a massive amount of points and kind of
had to be in the winning lineup.
Yeah, outshone them every step of the way. Taylor was a great play. Hawkinson got his normal steady, 13 to 15 point usage, but Stafford did seem to air it out more, so that's a good sign. But also, if you didn't have Waller, then it didn't really matter. And Akers did pretty well for his price.
Yeah.
But other than that, everything else was kind of so-so. Brian, you want to tell us how you did?
Yep, I had some good spots. I don't think I had any lineup killers whatsoever. I had Taysom Hill at 6,300, got 25 points, so he definitely did what he needed to do. Kenyon Drake and Kupp weren't tournament killers, but they were just kind of, they also didn't win you anything. Gesicki did great with 9 receptions and 88 yards. Taylor was my sneaky pick, although I had to piggyback off of you. And then Colts did decent, but just like you said, I mean, you had to have the New England defense to be able to do well. But yeah, Colts got 12 points against the Houston offense. So
yeah, for me, both of my quarterbacks worked out pretty well. Tannehill got 31 points, Carr got 35, and especially if you paired Carr with Waller, that probably would have won you some money there. Eckler was definitely probably my bust of the week. He only got 10 points against New England. Kiki Cutie did pretty well. I think he got a little over 20. Tunyon did all right. He got a touchdown. He got 13 points. And the Bears defense, a little disappointing. Only got 3 points against Detroit.
all right, let's on to the gut check.
Ooh, gut check!
And we're going to go ahead and have Scotty start the gut check off. We're going to be doing it a little bit different this week. So go ahead and take it away, Scotty.
All right. So I'm pretty much just going to go right down my list. I'm going to stick in Mike Glennon at quarterback. And I'm going to stick in some Derrick Henry as my first running back. And we're going to do some Jonathan Taylor as the running back number 2 there. Receivers, we're going to do some Chark for Jacksonville. Some Crowder for Seattle. I'm going to do some Antonio Brown just because Evans and Godwin aren't quite 100%. So hopefully he might have a good chance to blow up this week. And tight end wise, we're going to do some Hunter Henry, going to stick Thielen in the flex, and then we're going to go with the Giants pick at defense.
Yeah, I was thinking Antonio Brown as well. Like I didn't look far enough into it to take notes, but I definitely had him on my radar because I saw how banged up everybody else was. So he was definitely somebody I had under consideration.
Yeah, it's the only reason I really had him on my radar. It's just, with those injuries.
Yeah, I 100% agree on that. I just know that the coach doesn't like to have him focus on Antonio Brown, but if they don't have anybody else, what are they going to do?
Yeah, he's gotten the opportunity, except for last week, but his efficiency has been a little bit concerning. It isn't quite where it used to be in his prime, but he is either 32 or 33 years old, so
Yeah. They have had him do some unique plays. Hasn't he ran it a few times?
Not really. He has 2 rushing attempts.
Oh, well, I guess it stuck out in my head when I saw a play, and I was just like, man, that's weird. But all right, Mike, how about your gut check?
all right. I'm going to go I'm going to start with Patrick Mahomes, and then I'm going to stack him up with Sammy Watkins and Travis Kelce.
Ooh,
Yeah, and then I'm going to run it back with Mike Gesicki in the flex, hoping that unique build will kind of, with Watkins and the double tight end, that'll kind of bring me some leverage.
Mhm.
Then I've got Jonathan Taylor and Adrian Peterson as my running backs. And for my other two wide receivers, I have Keenan Allen and Michael Gallup. And then the Giants defense.
Got it.
Well, all right. So that concludes the Week 14 edition of the BSDFS Fantasy Football Podcast. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Hopefully you can take these picks, go out there, and win you some money. That's going to do it for us this week. Peace.